Good morning,
You are
everyone.
currently the only person in this conference.
Good morning, everyone. Let me take this particular opportunity to welcome you to today's class. As I told you on, this is a makeup class that we want to have. And our main area for today's class is basically we want to understand lenses. Like you remember, we have been talking about cinematography, that's introduction to cinematography. In the introduction to cinematography, we wanted to be able to understand what is this animal that we are calling cinematography, and who is a cinematographer or videographer. And after we talked about that, we moved on to talk about the production process. And as we were talking about the production process, we saw where this particular individual, the cinematographer, comes in the process of production, what are his or her responsibilities, and what at what particular point or stage does this particular individual exit from the process of production. Then we moved on and talked about the director of photography, who is the principal cinematographer, and we saw what he does at every stage of production, and that's in early preparations, close to during shooting and after shooting. And we saw several responsibilities that this particular individual basically needs to involve himself in. And as we were looking into this, something was actually coming out in that we almost saw that this particular individual needs to be able to understand at least everything that happens in every department. You're talking about the wardrobe department. This particular individual needs to be able to know what happens there. You talk about the construction department, that is a production design. This particular individual needs to be able to understand what happens there or what's going to happen, how the scenes and locations are going to be chosen, what will be the effects of those particular locations in terms of their color, in terms of their electricity, in terms of everything that will be happening there. Then we also looked into how this particular individual needs to be able to understand what happens in a directing. This particular individual needs to be able to understand and know every bit of directing, because every bit of directing will actually determine the kind of work that you will be able to do in terms of the shots, in terms of movements, in terms of the speed to which this particular movement will be. And for us now, we need to be able to understand what will happen. So when we are talking about the camera, last time again, we did talk about the various support equipment, what the camera can be able to do and how we will be able to make use of it. So this particular class, we basically want to move a step further and talk about lenses, because lenses plus the camera are actually the ones that will enable the cinematographer to be able to accomplish his work. Because without the lenses and without the camera, then it's like we are talking about a soldier who does not have a gun. We are talking about a teacher who does not have a pen. We are talking about an accountant without a pen. We are talking about a presenter without the microphone. And that's what happens to this particular individual whom we refer as the cinematographer, or as we saw last time, the director of photography. So, and we need to be able to know how to differentiate between the director and the director of photography. The director is the one who is the overall person in the creative process of a production, but the director of photography is the one who is in charge of the visual aspects of the production. That is how the product is going to look like. And this is a process, like we saw, that starts with this particular individual's script that we call the storyboard. He has to sit down and come up with a storyboard, and if he cannot be able to draw a storyboard per se, him as an individual, then he needs to be able to come in. He needs to be able to find the services of a storyboard artist who is going to help him. Now, when we talk about lenses, there are particular things that I just basically to be able to understand. And in relation to this, let me believe you can be able to see what I'm drawing on. Suleiman, Muli, and Dennis, are you able to see what I'm drawing on the board?
No, Pastor, I can't see.
Sorry, Mumo.
Personally, I cannot see.
Oh, you're not able to
Pastor, I
see?
can't see as well.
Yes.
Me too, I
Is-
cannot see.
There's nothing that you're seeing. I'm typing on the screen.
Yeah, I'm seeing right now.
You're seeing.
Yeah.
Oh,
See some
okay. That's
page-
exactly
yeah.
what I wanted us to have a look at.
Okay.
So I could be able to guide you, and if you can't be able to make short notes, that will be of key to you. Now, there are these terms that I would want us to be able to have in mind. And once we have these particular terms in mind, then I will be able to show you the other things that I would want us to see, then we can be able to talk about other things. Now, every other time, we normally hear people talk about lenses, and when they're talking about lenses, they talk about the prime lens. Does anyone of you know what a prime lens is? Is anyone among us is Muli? Wajua prime lens ni nini?
No.
Okay, when we talk about a prime lens, we are basically talking about a lens, and normally these particular lenses are lenses that we actually buy cameras with, which do not have the power to be able to zoom. Those particular lenses that we have, but do not have the power to zoom. So what that means is these particular lenses are actually fixed. You buy a camera, and that particular camera does not allow you to zoom. For example, if you are positioned at a particular point and you have seen something that's a distance away from you, and you want to bring it closer to you so that you can have a clear look of it, this particular lens does not allow you to be able to achieve that. What we call a prime lens. Or if something is so close to you, and for particular reasons, either for creativity or for reasons of that you'd want to move it away from you. This particular lens does not allow you to move it a distance away from you. That's what we're calling a fixed what? A fixed lens. And a fixed lens is always a prime lens. Number two, there's another key term that I would want to make us understand is what we call the lens speed. Now, when we're talking about the lens speed, we want basically to connect this particular lens with the camera's aperture. There's a a close connection between the lens speed and the camera aperture. Now, we talk about the camera aperture. We are talking about that particular area which opens and allows light into the camera. That particular part of the camera that allows light from the outside into the camera. Because what we need to be able to understand is that when you are taking photos, this is basically what will happen. That you'll have the subject somewhere here, and you'll have the camera somewhere here. And when you have the camera somewhere here, it's the light that falls on this particular subject that will actually be taken into the camera and be registered on the sensor somewhere here in the camera. And once this reflection is registered there, this particular light passes through an aperture somewhere here. So when this particular light passes through the aperture, sorry, it will be registered. It will be registered on the sensor camera. So the lens speed is connected to this particular aperture. What I'm trying to say is, if we say the lens speed of a given lens is higher, what it means is that that particular aperture of the camera opens very wide. So how fast it will be is basically we say if the camera's lens is fast, it means that aperture opens very wide. So if we say it's actually slow, then we equate that to a narrow opening. That it does not open very wide. So that is the relationship that is there between the lens speed and the aperture. So if you have if you'll be told that this particular lens is very fast, get to know that that particular lens very wide. If you are told that the lens is very slow, then get to understand that that lens's aperture does not really open very wide. It's very it narrowly opens. So you'll get to realize that cameras, more especially those ones that we use during the day and in very bright areas, will have the narrow lenses. I mean narrow apertures or slow. Their lens speed is very slow. In those particular areas where we'll be shooting, more especially if we are shooting during the night, and very dim areas, we'll use those particular lenses that have very fast speed. You're able to see which are the lenses that sorry, that are very fast and which are these that are very slow. Number three, I would want us to look into what we call the focal length. Another particular term that is very key in us understanding what is this that we are calling. I mean, what is this that we are discussing about lenses? Now, when we talk about the focal length, I do not want to discuss into the physics way, but I would want us to be able to look into it from the creative way as communicators. Now, when you talk about the focal length, we are basically talking about what is the power of magnification of a particular lens. How strong is it? What is that strength of that particular lens in terms of how it's going to magnify? And we normally measure this using millimeters. And normally you will be able to see that in every lens, like I'm going to show you, you'll be able to see that every lens comes with particular focal length measurements. You will have those ones that are less than 24 millimeters, those ones that are between 24 and probably 80 millimeters. You'll be able to see those that are 80 and 135 millimeters. You'll be able to have those ones that are above 135 millimeters. That's what we call the focal length, because every camera will tell you what it's capable of doing in terms of the strength of magnification. You can have a subject that is far away, but that particular lens has the power to be able to zoom it so close to you and magnify it and make it look huge and make it look large. That's what we call the focal length, and it's normally measured in millimeters. So after we know these three terms, that's the prime lens, the lens speed, and the focal length, I would want us to be able now to look into when we talk about these particular cameras. I mean, when we talk about these particular lenses, how are they? Now, allow me to share with you. I'd like to share with you a picture here. Now, are we able to see of a lens on the Hello? No? Hello? Dennis? Dennis? Now, when we into this particular picture that I'm sharing with you, you'll be able to realize that we have a lens here. In this particular lens, we are shown two main areas. Cameras come with about three rings: the aperture ring, the focus ring, and the zoom ring. Now, when you talk about the zoom ring, like I've told you, it's only the prime lenses that do not have this zoom ring. For them, they are actually fixed. They do not have that particular power to be able to zoom in and out. Now, when you talk about this particular lens here, you'll be able to realize that if you have a particular subject that is a distance away, this particular zoom ring is what you can be able to adjust accordingly so that it can be able to take away the subject or bring the subject closer to you. This is the back of the zoom ring. Then we have on the hand here what we call the focus ring. Now the focus ring is what determines the depth of field. Particular images are going to be sharper, particular images are going to be blurred. And what that means, if you zoom in a particular, you might be able to change the depth of field of that particular subject that you are shooting. So the best that you can be able to do is, if you can be able to now adjust the focus ring so that you can be able to change the depth of field so that the subject that you're interested on is going to be looking more sharper, and the other areas probably are going to be blurred. So that is the work of the focus ring. And the moment you look into any particular lens that you have for to leave those or however, other lens that more aperture, your screen aperture ring. This basically allow you to adjust what the aperture is going to be. Why does that happen? Normally, like I've told you, some particular shots might be done during the night. Let's take an example. Your videography's project is going to be done in the night. The light there is very dim. So what the best thing that you can be able to do is to open the aperture still wide so that you can allow that small amount of light in you able to have it. You can be able to have a clear and visible kind of images. If you get to realize that at times the best thing people to do is to grow the aperture, so the amount of light to is going to be, do not overexpose a subject, or you do not underexpose the subject. Because the moment you overexpose a subject, the quality of that particular is going to go. The moment you under expose a particular subject, the quality of that video is so big. The aperture depending on light that is in that particular environment. And one thing that you also realize is all about creativity. If your creativity allows you to be able to allow less light, so you expose subject, the best thing that you got to do is exactly that. Because you can basically make a design want to overexpose because the light and probably if your intentions, your creativity required you to be able to allow the light into the lens, the camera, so that is going to expose. You should be. It's all about like one my some of us are light skinned, some of us are skinned. You might find somebody who is a dark skinned and you want to add some color to this particular individual. The best thing that you can be able to do is try to see if you to add some more light. So this particular individual is going to not to be that dark skinned, because if you underpose them, then you're going to create what we call in photography and photography a sort of an image. So to look into what is it that look not the first hours is basically understand what can be able to do with this particular so that it can address what one, because ours is basically communication. In terms of communicating, that has that can enable me as a communicator, a cinematographer, to be able to pass information. Now, when you look at the exterior parts, you'll be able to realize we have various parts here. We have the filter head as specifications are the ones that determine the type, the lens. But you'll have a lens that is 24 and 50 millimeters to tell you that our lens. If you have says this is 105 or black, that's you a telephoto. So these specifications are meant for you to be able to understand the type of lens that you have. The zoom ring is this is a ring, like I've told you, that the neighbor project closer or particular object away from you. And when I'm saying take it closer or take it far away, closer, take it far away from you. What that particular you what it can be able, it can be able. Now the distance in Blika is basically what I told you at the beginning, the focal length. That's what people that you what you to use. The depth field indicates this is what tells you of the focal ring, what the ring capable of doing. The upper ring, like see, is what allows you to open the aperture and it. So we can be able to talk about the lens to open or open body. Then that is fast. If it's going to open that particular is actually slow. Then have what you call mount. Mount is that part which enables you to the camera that you have. Able to do so. And normally this mount kuna zingia that particular dot. What normally happens is if it does not have that red dot somewhere on the lens, you cannot match that, but that particular lens, that particular camera. So they are very specific. Those ones. So when you're going to buy lens, check on those particular markings on the lens mount. Kuna yenye na red somewhere. Check on it and so that you not buy a lens. You can buy when you want to attach it. Unapata aina. So much to be able to select the unapata. And now the image is the thing somewhere you to stabilize. Most especially if you're to hand the kind of video to do is handle so that we do have images and if they are going to they are not going to be stable. That is something that be able to kufikia hapo kweli and then Dennis.
Yes, I'm having troubles with trying to reconnect again.
Sorry?
I'm having troubles with my network, but I'm trying to reconnect. That I'm
Oh,
in and out of the session.
uh, I'm seeing was in and out. Probably could be as a result of but again, like this particular class is actually recorded. Probably have a lesson you can be able to learn to the particular uh, because it will be there on the portal, so that we can be able to follow what the discussion that we have been having from the beginning to the end. Something is
Yeah, yes, sawa, nimekusikia.
sawa sawa. Wewe tukimaliza uta because again see kitu under control, it's something that is beyond your control. You can to come back and watch a particular video, and it will be able to take you through what we discussing. Very
Okay, sawa sawa.
sawa sawa. Very okay. Now not to be having a question. Now let me go back and again allow us to be able to look into the various types of the various types of lenses. Now, Suleiman Abdul Suleimani Abdul,
Yes. Yes.
umeingia na kutoka kuingia na kutoka shida.
Alikuwa na emergency kidogo.
Oh,
Uh,
Sasa, welcome back.
thank you.
Now we have looked basically into the anatomy of a camera, and looking into the anatomy of the camera, we have basically looked into the various parts and what they can be able to help you do. And as we have looked into what they can be able to help you do, we want to move and talk about now the various types of lenses that we normally have. Now, when you talk about the various types of lenses, I do not want to go back and talk about the prime lenses, which we have basically talked about. And we have said normally these are lenses that we buy our cameras with. Now, unapata this particular type of lens is actually fixed, that it does not have the power to zoom. It does not allow you to actually to zoom in or zoom out. So this is what it actually enables. It does not have that particular. It does not have that particular power to be to zoom. So what I want us to be able to look into is what are these other types of now of lenses, and as we talk about them, I want us to be able to look into them keenly and see where can we be able to make use of them. The number one kind of lens that we can be able to make use of is what we call the wide lens. Now, when we talk about the wide lens, this is a lens that uh, 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 um, that the full frame of 24 to around 40 millimeters. And when we talk about this wide lens, you get to realize that it's actually a lens that you can be able to use, more especially if you're shooting um, indoors. And when you're shooting indoors, you get to realize that the kind of space that you have is actually small. And this wide lens is very good when it comes to you working on shots of about 2 to 3, actually 1, 2, or 3 people, and they're very good in terms of you doing uh, kinds of shots like the close-ups and even sometimes the medium shots. They're very good in terms of an area where the subjects that you're shooting and the cinematographer, there is no huge distance between the two of you. So you get to realize that you cannot be able to make use of these other cameras. But when you use these other types of lenses, but when you make use of the wide lens, it's going to be able to give you the very best that you can be able to make use of. So you need to be able to look into this. However, as you make use of the wide lens in doing the close-ups, sometimes it can actually distort. It has the power to be able to distort close-ups. So you need to be very careful in terms of how you can be able to make use of the how you can make use of the wide lens. You need to be very careful, because if you're not very careful, it can actually distort the close-ups, distort in terms of um, uh, the quality of the video, and sometimes how the image is going to look. Sometimes they are going to be so huge, it's a close-up, but it's going to be very huge, and that cannot allow you to be able to have the very best. Then the other kind of or type of lens that we have is what we call the standard lens. And when you talk about the standard lens, its full frame is actually about 50 millimeters. Now, when we talk about this, sorry. Okay. Now, when you talk about the standard lens, which has a full frame of about 50 millimeters, this particular lens is very good when we talk about the kind of videos that you'd want to take. You would want to not have a very good not a very good depth of field. The particular areas you'd want them to be shallow. In some other areas you'd want them to be very, very, very deep. In that other particular areas would be in focus and other areas to be out of focus. We have seen scenarios where those who are doing photography, or those ones that are doing uh, uh, like fashion photography, you'll get to realize that they would want to bring a particular subject into sharp focus, and these other subjects are going to be out of focus, so that our main attention is given to that particular subject of interest. This standard lens is actually the one that is best for it. If we can be able to make use of it. Again, you get to realize that this particular lens also slightly can actually distort the close-ups. If you're not very careful on how to frame your videos of close-up shots, you'll get to realize that they can also slightly. You need to be able to know what kind of distance can you be able to have, so that at the end of the day, it can be able to give you the very best video that you can be able to have. Then number 3, we talk about the medium lens. Medium lens is
Types of lenses. Amefanya nini? Sijaona akizima, ni simu imepotea.
Sasa Joy.
Juu ya utagongwa bure.
Now, when you talk about the medium lens or the medium telephoto lens, when we talk about the medium telephoto lens, this kind of a lens has of around 85 to 100 millimeters. Around 85 to 100 millimeters. Now, this kind of a lens is the one that we normally use, more especially if we'd want to do videography in the night. It's very good when it comes to where we have low amounts of light. If you're going to do videography indoors, you get to realize that this medium telephoto lens is actually very good, because you'll get to realize that its speed is actually very high, meaning that its aperture can open very wide. And if it's going to open very wide, then that can allow you to be able to do videography indoors. But again, as we make use of it in indoors world where there is no enough amount of light, and us bearing in mind that this particular medium telephoto lens opens its aperture very wide, then it makes it very tricky to be used while you're holding it on your hands. This one is, if you allow this particular camera if you work with this particular camera while you are holding it on your hands, and you allow it to be able to take the video, it's going to create a lot of flares. Let me use this example of a person who is moving from point A to point B. If this person is moving from point A to point B, by the time this person moves to point B, he shall be leaving or she shall be leaving traces as he or she moves from point A to B. So utakuwa unaona ni kama a ghost kind of a person who is moving from point A to point B. Unless, again, like I've always told you, your creativity requires that you have a person moving in that particular manner. Because what if you wanted to tell people that, this is a ghost of an individual who is moving from point A to point B? You will make use of this particular lens so that it can actually allow you to have that blurred person moving from A to B and looking like a ghost. That will be something that you'd want. If that's what you want because of that creativity, then there's no reason why you will not be able to make use of that particular lens. Like we have said, it's good when you're doing indoor shooting, where there's no enough amount of light. But you need to be very careful, because when you're going to use it while it's handheld, it's going to be tricky. It can allow a lot of blurred images, a lot of blurred videos. But again, if that's what you wanted, then you can be able to move in and make use of it like that. But if you did not intend to be able to have it, then the best thing that you're able to do is use it. It's mounted on a tripod stand. Use it while it's mounted on a tripod stand. Then the other type of lens that we have is actually what we call a telephoto lens. This is a full telephoto lens. Very heavy. Normally, these kind of lenses, they are very heavy. They are very huge. Its full frame is actually more than 135 millimeters or more. You normally realize that this particular telephoto lens has a full frame of 135 millimeters or more. So when it tells you like that, this is a lens that you can be the ZTech University building at the top there, and be able to zoom in something that um, is that something that is actually at KU, or something that is actually at JQuat. You can zoom in and bring it so closer to you, and you'll look at it clearly. You'll be able to you'll be able to have a very clear image of that particular subject, meaning that the photo lenses have that particular power to be able to zoom in so much. They can people they have a very powerful focal length. We said the focal length is the ability to be able to magnify subjects. You can look into an ant that is on the floor and make it look like it's a cock. Telephoto in terms of how they do their magnification, and their focal length is very high, meaning they have they have a long focal length. Long focal length means that they are able to draw subjects that are far away, so closer to you. And if their focal length is short, then it means that they cannot be able to draw, because if you have a 135 and somebody has a 300, their focal length are quite different. The power of the 300 is very powerful, that it can be able to magnify from very long distances, and the 135 now its distance is actually closer where you are to where you are. Then lastly, we have what we call now the ultra wide lens. Ultra wide lens. This type of lens has um, 4 or less, 0.4 millimeters or less. So you get to realize that this one, some people talk about the fish eye kind of lens. This one is very good where you'd want to capture so much into that particular one video or shot. For example, you could be in, let's take an example, you are in a class of about 70 students, And when you look into where they are seated to the front, you do not have enough space so that you can be able to go back and be able to bring on board everybody. In such a scenario, the best kind of lens that you can be able to use is actually an ultra wide lens, so that you wherever wherever you're standing, it can take like a degree of about 150. Uh, we did mathematics. When you have that protractor from 0 all the way to 150, 130, 180, meaning anything that's along that particular line where you are standing, anything that is in front of you is going actually to be seen. That's the kind of lens that we call the ultra wide kind of a lens. The only problem that this particular ultra wide lens has is that the edges of the shots appear to be actually distorted. They're not that very good. They're not that very good looking. So at the edges, towards the end of the frame of that particular shot, they appear to be distorted. This kind of lens is very good, more especially when you talk about people are working documentary filmmaking. It's very fast, and it enables you to be able to capture a lot into that particular video or frame. Unlike when you talk about now the medium telephoto or the telephoto lens, which requires you to, zoom in and zoom out, but the ultra wide lens allows you to be able to capture a lot and fit that a lot into the shot that we are having. So as we have looked into the various types of lenses that we have, I would want us to look into reasons as to why we choose lenses. Now we have seen the various types of lenses, and we have seen the anatomy of that particular lens, what it can enable you to do and what it can't enable you to do. Then whenever you'd want to go out and work on a project or make a decision as to which particular lens are you going to use. And if you're going to make a decision as to why you'd want to make use of a particular lens, there will be reasons as to why you're going to make that particular decision of which particular lens that you're going to use. Number one, people make decisions because of their own creative objectives. Like I've told you, you might be in an area where there is no enough light. And if there's no enough light, then the best thing that you can be able to do is have that particular camera that can allow its aperture open very wide. Now, if that particular camera, I mean that particular lens allows you to open its aperture very wide, then that's the very best kind of lens that you can be able to use. So when we talk about the medium telephoto lens, it can work well with where there is low amounts of light. That is the best that we can be able to. So you get to realize that you wanted to be able to achieve a given objective that is related to creativity, then that particular lens is the one that you you're going to use. Sometimes, apart from creativity, we normally look into the narrative um, objectives that we have. Like I've told you, you can have a particular lens that is going to allow you to be able to uh, be able to tell a certain story in a particular in a way. For example, we have talked about if you're using a photo lens, it's not good in terms of how you're going to work with it if it's going to be handheld. Why? Because its aperture opens very wide, and if it opens very wide, that means allows now a lot of blurred images to be created. Now, it allows a lot of blurred images to be created. Then what are you going to do now? The best that you can be able to do is to determine this is the kind of lens that I'm to use, because it can allow me to create those blurred images from moving from point A to point B, so that I'm able to tell this kind of a story. If that's what happens, then you get to realize that that narrative objective now will be achieved if you make use of that particular lens. That is the best to be able to do, and it will enable you now to be able to achieve that 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 objective. Um, another reason as to why you can make choices in terms of the, 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 the the lens that you're going to use. It's all about artistic reasons. Now, when you talk about artistic reasons, there are particular um, ways of how you'd want to tell the stories. For example, when you're talking about the wide lines and the standard lines, I told you that when you work with those particular lenses and you'd want to have close-ups, wide lens will distort the close-up, and that the standard lens will actually slightly distort the close-up. Now, if you wanted sharper images, then that might not be the kind of that you're going to use. But again, if you want sharper images, then you'll get to realize that the wide lens and the standard lens will actually be the kind of lenses that you will be using. So this kind of artistic reasons have determined how you're going to decide which particular lens are you going to use. So in terms of the thickness of that particular image, or in terms of how blurred it's going to be. Then we have talked about, I remember when we were talking about the lens speed, I told you of speed with which they can be able to open the aperture and close that particular aperture. That speed is also an artistic reason as to why you can make a decision either to use this particular lens or to go for another lens. And lastly, number is when you talk about contrast. Contrast is also an artistic objective or reason as to why you might make a decision to use one particular lens and avoid the other, in the sense that, like we have talked about, if you would want to um, bring particular images into deep focus and other images out of focus, that's how you'd want to contrast them. That one particular subject is going to be of interest to us, and another subject is going to be out of focus, so that we are now directed towards that particular subject that is of interest. So you get to realize that now determines the kind of lens that we are going to make use of. So up to that particular point, it my belief and trust that as much as we have been moving in and out because of technical reasons, like you have said, I want to believe that we now know what a lens is. It can be able to do for you, what it be able to do for you. The various types of lenses that we have, starting from the prime lens, the wide lens, the standard lens, the medium telephoto lens, the telephoto lens, the ultra wide lens. Then, and to the reasons as to why we might make a decision to use an ultra wide lens and avoid a telephoto lens, or make use of a prime lens and avoid a standard lens. And up to that particular point, I want to believe that we're moving together. Before we talk about something else, kuna swali? Kuna mtu hakuna swali? Erira, Peril, Muli,
Yes, okay. I have a question here.
sorry?
Are you getting me?
Yeah, now I'm getting you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, for example, I want to take a photo of electricity and the whole building. Which type of lens should I use?
If you are,
If I want to take a photo of the whole city, like, building, when I'm which type of lens should I use?
your voice seems to cut and be off and on. Can you be able to type that question?
Or let me do it.
Kindly type because your voice is on and off. Maliza kutype. Ulimaliza? Uli? Muli?
Hello.
Umemaliza?
Hello, hear me?
Umetype kweli? Muli umetype kweli?
There's a look in the
Sorry? Ya kupata? Muli? Muli? Hello, Muli? Muli? Yeah, Muli? Swali yako ulikuwa unasema? Eh? Mhm. Mhm. Or the lens that you can be able to use even to take the entire building of Zitec University. Si ndivyo hivyo? You understanding? When, when you're standing at Thika Road. Now, there will be, as in, like I've said,
You are
like why
currently
you
the
can
only
make
person in this conference.
you can make decisions in terms of what exactly you want. Like we have said, reasons can be creative, they can be narrative, they can be artistic. Now, for example, if we are standing in front of the gate there, you cannot use a telephoto lens, but use an ultra wide lens. that will enable you to put so much into the screen or into the short. But again, if you realize that you will not be that close, probably utakuwa kwa hiyo bridge ya kuvuka kwenda Ruiru ndani, then the best that you can be able to use is you can use you can use a medium telephoto or a telephoto lens, and that will enable you now to have everything of Zite University building iingie kwa hiyo shot yako. So it depends, one, on the creative narrative and artistic reasons, and number two, it's also determined by the distance that you are in between you, the cinematographer, and the subject that you'd want to take. Sasa. Sawa. Thank you. At a point in time, I want to bring to an end this particular morning session, and let's go back to the Moodle. We will be able to have a forum there, and I would want us to discuss one or two things before we can be able to wind up today's class in the next like 20 or so minutes. So we can close now and move on to the portal where we're going to have a discussion forum on one or two things before we can be able to call it a day for today.